Welcome to the deep dive. For anyone managing a complex project or a product launch or even just building a large feature,
Hmm.
we tend to focus so intensely on the technology, right? The code, the design.
Hmm.
But time and time again, the biggest hurdle, it isn't the technical challenge.
No, it's not.
It's the alignment challenge, getting all the critical stakeholders pointing toward the same goal.
It is the definition of friction in the product world. I mean,
Yep.
you can have the most brilliant roadmap, but if your leadership, your engineers, and your go-to-market teams all have a slightly different internal story about why you're building it,
Right.
you've guaranteed yourself constant rework, churn, and those awful last-minute objections. If alignment isn't one of your core jobs, success becomes basically a gamble.
So today, our mission is to move beyond seeing alignment as just a soft skill. We're going to treat it as a core defined process, and we're zeroing in on probably the most powerful communication tool for this, the narrative memo.
We want to show you exactly how to stop sharing, scattered bullet points and raw feature lists and start crafting a structured, compelling story that actually drives consensus and clarity.
And when you succeed at this, you get what every team dreams of. You move faster. You stop arguing over the tiny details of implementation, and you start executing with a shared purpose. This whole process, it leads to significantly faster decisions and much, much smoother delivery.
Okay, let's unpack this then. When we talk about alignment, it sounds simple, but what are, say, the three foundational requirements? What does it really mean?
It's far more nuanced than just simple agreement. Stakeholder alignment really means three non-negotiable things have to be true. First, they must understand what you are doing, and this is the crucial part, why you are doing it right now.
The why now?
Exactly. Second, they have to feel heard. Their concerns, their inputs, they were acknowledged and actually factored into the strategy. And third, they need to be sufficiently supportive, or, at a minimum, not actively blocking your path. That third point is so key. Supporting doesn't necessarily mean absolute consensus, does it?
No, not at all. And the difference is critical. Alignment doesn't demand that everyone agrees with every single detail. It requires that they accept the strategic direction because they understand the rationale, the constraints, and the inevitable trade-offs involved.
Mm.
The whole point is to eliminate surprises late in the cycle.
And to eliminate surprises, you first have to know your audience. You've got to map out who they even are. So let's run through the common groups because their interests can be wildly different.
Absolutely. Think about it in four core camps. You've got leadership. They're focused on the macro view. Business outcomes, strategic positioning, risk, revenue targets. Success for them is the bottom line.
Right. And then at the other end, you have engineering and design teams. They're looking at feasibility, system health, technical debt, and just sustainable delivery timelines.
Yeah.
They worry about the how and the real cost of the build.
Then you've got the go-to-market cruise sales, marketing, customer success. They live and die by customer fit, positioning, whether a new feature lets them close a deal or, reduces customer friction.
And you can't forget the essential support functions like legal, finance, compliance. They're the guardians of risk, of compliance, and cost control.
And you cannot communicate with these four groups using the same template. It just doesn't work. That's why we rely on that simple but really effective mental model, the 2x2 matrix of influence versus interest.
Yeah, the classic 2x2.
It tells you not just who to talk to, but how much effort you need to put into that communication.
Okay, let's walk through the critical quadrants, starting with the highest priority group.
That's your key players. High influence, high interest. These are your senior leaders, your main internal sponsors, maybe some major customers. The strategy here is intensive. You keep them closely engaged, involve them early, and make sure their concerns are front and center in your narrative. Their full alignment is, well, it's non-negotiable.
Then you have the group that I think trips up even experienced leaders. The powerful but peripheral high influence, low interest. Who does this group usually include?
This is often an executive from another division, whose budget might get touched, or maybe a high-level legal or finance exec. They aren't interested in the day-to-day, but they have the power to stop the whole initiative overnight.
And what's the common failure point there? Where do people go wrong?
The mistake is usually blindsiding them. Because they have low interest, product managers often forget to loop them in, or they bury the relevant detail like a $500,000 unbudgeted cost or some massive new data regulation complexity deep in an appendix.
Oh, I can see where this is going.
Right. And when that exec sees a huge impact late in the game, they don't ask questions. They just halt the project. For this group, you have to keep them satisfied with concise, high-level updates, but flag critical impacts clearly and early.
Understood. concise updates, but make sure the red flags are visible. Okay, moving on. You have the low influence, high interest group. These are often the people on the front lines, right? Like IC engineers, support reps, or really engaged users.
Yep, you inform them thoroughly, you listen to their insights, they have invaluable ground truth, and you let them become passionate advocates for your plan. The last group, low influence, low interest, just gets light touch monitoring. Keep tabs, but minimize the communication overhead.
So knowing the quadrant is one thing, but aligning them means you have to address their specific hopes and, maybe more importantly, their specific fears.
Oh, absolutely. You have to
Okay.
translate your plan into their language. Let's think about a clash. I remember a project where the product team proposed a major architectural rework. They framed it as reducing tech debt to ensure future scalability.
Okay, so if they take that pure technical phrase to say sales leadership, how does that land?
Terribly. Sales leadership just hears, you're building nothing new for 6 months and we can't close deals. What sales wants are features that close deals. What they fear is losing those deals.
And when that same phrase goes to engineering leadership,
They want sustainable pace, tech health, clear priorities. Their fears are all about constant scope creep and building brittle systems. That architectural rework is exactly what they want, but only if it comes with clear boundaries. You have to connect the rework to the business outcome sales cares about.
So you reframe it.
You reframe it. You say, this rework ensures 99.99% uptime, which removes the biggest objection we saw in 30% of our enterprise deal failures.
That translation is everything. Which brings us to a fundamental question. If I've done all this hard work, I know my stakeholders, I have clear priorities, I have a roadmap, isn't that enough? Why do we need this extra step of a narrative memo?
This is the critical juncture, what I call the roadmap trap. Typical roadmaps are just lists. They list epics or initiatives tied to dates, launch feature X. They are functionally insufficient for alignment because they only tell you what you're building. They have zero context.
So without context, the roadmap becomes an invitation for a fight.
Exactly. Without explicitly stating the why these features and why now, stakeholders immediately fill those gaps with their own assumptions. I remember a project where the engineering lead, based on his own assumption, spent 2 weeks refactoring code. Sales assumed that refactoring included a customer-facing feature that was never scoped. The result:
Chaos.
total chaos, finger-pointing, and a 3-month delay while they argued. The roadmap provided the data, or not the truth.
Right.
And a product narrative steps in to provide that truth. It's the written story that frames that raw roadmap inside a powerful logical rationale. It answers, what problem are you solving? For whom? Why now? What strategy are you pursuing? The whole point is to make stakeholders see the reasoning, not just react to the decisions.
That's a profound distinction. People gravitate towards stories. Lists just feel like orders. Okay, let's get highly tactical. If the narrative memo is the solution, what's the structure that gives it this power? The source material we looked at suggests a 9-section structure that really forces clarity of thinking.
The power of this structure is that it moves stakeholders logically from the foundational problem all the way to the proposed solution and the commitment.
Let's list the sections quickly just to set the stage. Title and summary, context and background, customer and business problem, vision and objectives,
Proposed strategy, roadmap as a narrative.
risks, assumptions and trade-offs, impact and success metrics, and then finally, requests or next steps.
And while you have to complete all 9, securing the buy-in really hinges on 4 specific sections that force clarity and accountability.
Okay, let's start at the top. The title and summary. Why can't we just use a generic title like Q4 product plan?
Because that tells no story. The summary has to immediately answer the what, the why, and the expected impact in just 3 to 5 sentences. It needs to be descriptive, concise, and focused on outcomes. For instance, memo on simplifying self-serve onboarding, expected to increase trial-to-paid conversion by 20 to 25%,
That's specific.
and reduce related support tickets by 15% in the next 6 months. Leadership should be able to read just those 4 lines and decide if they even need to read the rest.
Got it. The next crucial step is nailing the customer and business problem. This needs that dual view we talked about earlier, right?
It has to make the problem painfully clear. If you skip this, you're just arguing over features instead of validating the need. You have to articulate the customer pain, where are they getting stuck, and then immediately translate that pain into the business perspective.
Yeah.
How does this affect revenue, churn, or costs? If you don't convince them the problem is worth solving, the rest of the memo is irrelevant.
Once we've established the pain and why the business cares, we pivot to the future state with vision and objectives.
This is your North Star section. The vision describes that idealized future state. A new customer can go from sign-up to first value in under 10 minutes. The objectives, then, must be the specific, measurable outcomes, what we often use as measurable OKRs.
Like what? Give us a concrete objective.
For example, increase trial-to-paid conversion from the current 18% to 23% or higher by the end of Q4. That is unambiguous, it's measurable, and everyone understands the goalpost. It's a number you can argue about, but once you agree, it defines success.
Okay, so we've established the problem and the goals. Now we get to the roadmap as a narrative. We're explicitly not pasting in a Gantt chart here.
Exactly. No Gantt charts. You are illustrating the difference between a raw list and a story. A list says, Q3, onboarding Wizard V2, database upgrade. A narrative says, to deliver on our goal of increasing conversion, Q3 will focus entirely on reducing friction. We'll introduce a simplified onboarding wizard which removes non-essential steps. You are linking the work directly to the outcome and the strategy you laid out earlier.
That enforced clarity is invaluable. But let's pause for a second. We've defined the problem and the goals, but this sounds like it takes a lot of time to write. Doesn't forcing every product manager to write a detailed 9-section memo just slow down rapid iteration? Isn't speed sometimes more valuable than clarity?
That's a necessary challenge, I think. The truth is, while it takes longer to write the memo, it dramatically accelerates execution speed. You pay the clarity tax once, up front, which prevents you from paying the rework tax 10 times later. This memo is the single source of truth that survives personnel changes and shifting market winds.
That makes sense. And the most critical section for preventing that rework later is the one I feel like most people try to rush through. Risks, assumptions, and trade-offs. This is where you build trust.
This is where you put all your cards on the table, and it is the absolute key to building credibility. Let's look at the 3 elements. First, assumptions. What must be true for the plan to succeed? You have to list these explicitly so they can be challenged.
For example,
We might assume our qualitative research indicating that pricing clarity is a major driver of trial-to-paid conversion is accurate. This surfaces a critical hypothesis. If your finance team reads that memo and thinks pricing isn't the issue, they can debate the assumption now instead of waiting 6 months to debate the feature you built based on it.
and next, the trade-offs. This is where you explicitly choose what you are not doing, which I imagine is always the hardest part.
It is the strategic core of the entire memo. Showing what you're sacrificing demonstrates focus. If you try to please everyone, you please no one. We need concrete examples of difficult trade-offs.
Give us a few.
A classic one might be security versus speed. You state it. We are prioritizing the new multi-factor authentication requirement for compliance, and we are accepting a minor delay in the launch of feature X, or maybe monetization versus engagement. We are delaying the advanced user analytics features this half to focus entirely on building our premium feature paywalls.
And by doing that, you manage expectations.
You manage expectations, and you prevent the stakeholder who cares about analytics from saying, "But I thought we were building that."
By putting it in the memo, you force acceptance of that strategic choice. And this level of transparency is exactly what leads to that idea of disagree and commit.
Exactly. Alignment is not consensus where everyone holds hands. It is a shared understanding that leads to a clear, documented decision. A stakeholder might still disagree with the trade-off. Say the head of engineering really wanted to address some tech debt, but because the rationale was made explicit in the memo, they accept and commit to supporting the decision. They start resisting.
But how do we handle the inevitable pushback? When we introduce a trade-off that really impacts one department, like the sales team seeing their requested feature pushed off for 6 months.
That's where the memo becomes a mediation tool. You don't present it as a surprise. You tie it directly back to the problem and objectives from earlier. You say, while delaying feature Y impacts sales, our primary objective is to increase conversion from 18% to 23%. Feature X is the most statistically likely way to do that. We commit to revisiting feature Y in Q4. You force the conversation to stay anchored to the shared objective, not individual wish lists.
That ties perfectly into the final essential section. Impact and success metrics. How do we differentiate these metrics effectively?
We have to categorize them. We need business metrics like revenue or churn customer metrics like NPS or time to value and product metrics like feature adoption or activation rate. And you must tie the roadmap initiatives directly to these metrics. The new onboarding wizard will specifically increase the activation rate by 10 percentage points. This tells everyone exactly what good looks like and prevents subjective debates later.
So if we recap the key shift here, you're moving from being a task manager who orders features to being a strategic leader who establishes the vision and tells the full accountable story of where the product is going.
The narrative memo forces clarity, it surfaces unspoken assumptions, it makes the risks explicit, and critically, it creates a single shareable artifact that maintains alignment long after the review meeting ends. It is the artifact of the strategic alignment itself.
That's a powerful takeaway. The narrative is the strategy made tangible. So what final provocative thought should the listener carry forward as they prepare to write their next memo?
Consider this. If the fundamental role of a product leader is to tell the story of the future, what happens when you don't provide a strong, detailed narrative? If you leave gaps in the story of your strategy, if you only provide a list, your stakeholders will inevitably fill those gaps with their own assumptions, their own biases, and their own priorities.
You get chaos.
You effectively create a dozen competing internal narratives, all undermining your decision. The challenge for you is to actively, proactively write that definitive story first.
An excellent challenge. Take control of the narrative. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and we encourage you to use that 9-section memo structure in your very next strategic conversation.